etc. My just kind of, I have a big void in my life that I can't account for. I don't have any pictures. I don't have any, things that really give me a sense of who I was, where I came from, etc. And I tried all that, 23andMe and Ancestors.com, and that didn't work. That didn't reveal anything. And so I think it was more that I just was trying to complete a picture of myself and my life, and I couldn't do it. And I thought that psychology would help me.
This has always been a bit intriguing to me. 89% of you that listen to the show regularly haven't yet subscribed to the show. So, could I ask you a favor? Before we start, if you like the show and you like what we do here and you want to support us, the free and simple way that you can do just that is by hitting the subscribe button. And my commitment to you is if you do that, then I'll do everything in my power to make sure that this show is better for you every single week. I'll listen to your feedback you want me to speak to, and we'll continue to do what we do. Thank you so much.
And welcome into this edition of the Earl Hall Show. My featured guest today is Dr. James A. Anderson, former chancellor of Fayetteville State University, accomplished psychologist, author, and nationally respected thought leader in diversity, education, and transformation. He's also the author of The Miracle on Corcoran Street. Dr. Anderson, welcome to the Earl Hall Show. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Earl. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's always an honor for me to have someone like you on the show that has such a distinguished background. I know my own father, he has 2 master's degrees and 1 doctoral degree. And to see the way that generation, your generation, has embraced education has meant so much. What was the thing that inspired you or made you really want to go into this field and at such a high level?
Well, it was 2 things. One, the story of when you're in college, you meet a great instructor. And that instructor, his name was John Abood, and I was a student at Villanova University in Pennsylvania. And John was just such a wonderful instructor. And when I finished his course, I knew 2 things. I knew I was going to be a college professor, and I knew I was going to get a PhD in psychology. So that individual had that much influence on me. So sometimes, people step into your life unannounced and just have a profound impact on how you think and how you see yourself, really. And the reason that was important for me was because there was so many holes in my life. If you read the book, The Miracle on Corcoran Street, it's a testament to the emotional resilience of a young boy who was abandoned by his parents at birth, who ran the streets, who belonged to gangs and all of that, yet had aspirations to do well in school because everywhere I turned, there was an advocate or a mentor who coaxed me to do better and to go to the next level and think about the next level. You can't go to the next level till you think about the next level. I potentially was headed to prison, man. I was headed to juvenile detention centers, etc., because of running with these gangs in Washington, D.C. And I needed the gangs for protection. I needed the gangs because they paid me a little bit of money to run errands, right. Different kinds of things. So it's your classic ghetto to glory story.
Well, what's interesting to me about what you're saying about, because you made a huge transformation, obviously. The transformation is apparent, especially for those that, read that book or understand your history with this. How did that transformation occur? What was that pinnacle moment for you that you said, I can't do this anymore? I've got to make some sort of change.
In the book, I make reference to the fact that when I witnessed my first murder on the playground, and I was a big-time basketball player in D.C., and we were playing on the courts one day, and older guys were over on the side of the playground shooting crap. And all of a sudden, we heard one guy say the N-word and say, "You're cheating, man, you're cheating." He slit the throat of the guy that he was accused of cheating. Everybody started hauling ass away from the playground because they knew the police were coming. But three of us walked over to the guy to see if we could help him.
Yeah.
And when I looked at the blood gushing out his throat and the pool of blood he was laying in, I said, this is not what I want to do in life. Being in this gang is not worth it to me. And that was the outstanding moment in my life that made me think about where I was at that point in time and then where I needed to go.
Dr.
And
Anderson,
so education
I mean,
became.
seeing that, I mean, I've never seen anything like that, right? But looking at you going through that experience, help us understand, how do you go from that and why psychology?
Well, psychology, remember early in the book, the first 2 or 3 chapters, I talk about the abandonment by my parents, being left at the hospital. And God rest her soul, if this elevator operator at the hospital hadn't stepped up to take me home, nothing was done legally. She just said, I'll take him home. And if she hadn't stepped up to do that, probably, worse things would have happened in my life because I would have gone to a orphanage or something like that. So the transformation, it's not the act itself, it's what follows it and the people you shared it with, how they guided you. And immediately, the only group of people I trusted at that time were the Black Catholic nuns at the elementary school I attended. And I told them about what I had witnessed. And they immediately upped their game in terms of looking out for me, guiding me, protecting me, making sure that I didn't fall sway to the negative influences in the community at that time. So it's not just the act of witnessing the murder, but it was also afterwards when I talked to people who I trusted and cared about. They stepped up their game to guide me in a different direction.
And that's amazing with that, and having that help and that support system, I think was vital and is vital to so many people. While you were making this transition, I'm assuming you still ran into members of the gang.
Yeah.
And people, and I've, heard stories about, it's impossible to get out, or they won't let you out. Was that an issue?
Not really, because the second gang I belonged to when I was a young teenager. See, the first gang I belonged to was when I was a young kid. And so I wasn't going to be admitted into that gang, the LeDroit Park gang, until I was older, even though I ran errands and did other things for them. But the second gang I was involved with, the Decatur Street Boys, they tended to range in age from maybe 14 to 25. You had the old head component of the gang. And so the second gang was really the one I'm talking about, of needing to break away from. And I hadn't been admitted to that gang yet. I hung around them all the time. I did things with them. I ran errands for them, but I had not been formally admitted to the gang.
Okay. Well, then I understand that dynamic then. If we switch gears here for a moment, what was your inspiration for and your love of psychology that made you go down this deep hole all the way to PhD level?
I had so many questions I could not answer about my life, especially my early life after my parents left me at the hospital. And I think I saw psychology as a way to potentially answer some of those questions. Now, I also just, at that same time, my later undergraduate years and my beginning graduate school years, at that same time, Black psychology was emerging. And so that whole area I began to immerse myself into. And then I met my primary mentor who just passed away in January. His name was A. Wade Boykin. And A. Wade was the first Black professor at Cornell and later was a professor at Howard University and got one of the largest grants ever on the education of minority youth. So once I ran into Wade, who was a great basketball player, by the way, that's what attracted me to him, because I was a great basketball player.
All right
And
now.
what attracted me to him was I was introduced to the concept of rigor, that you don't say anything unless you can back it up with
Okay.
evidence, with research, etc. And so Wade had a tremendous influence on me because even when I got to grad school in my later undergraduate years, I still had a little bit of that thug mentality, even though I did well in school. And I realized when I got to Cornell that the white students were so much smarter than I was. And they had been exposed to so much more than I had been exposed to. And in terms of,
It's odd that you say they were so much smarter. Was it just that they had more exposure to things coming
yes,
up that was different from yours?
yes. And the best example I can give is I took my first statistics course at Cornell was an advanced stat course. Well, I had never had beginning stat back at Villanova because I was a Spanish major at first until I met John Abood in my junior year, and then I changed to psychology. So I had never had that course, a beginning stat course. And so, but all of these students in my entering class at Cornell, they had an intro to stat course. So it was easy for them to transfer that knowledge base to another knowledge, a more demanding situation for advanced stat. And so I realized that I was out of my league and I had to really step up to be successful and compete.
Awesome. We're here with Dr. James A. Anderson, and we're going to take a short break and we're going to be right back because I've got a very interesting question I need an answer to. Stay
Thank you.
tuned. Struggling with dull, tired skin? It's time to unlock your skin's true potential with Ugly Essentials Fetish Ultimate Facial Cleanser. This exfoliating powerhouse gently buffs away dead skin cells, revealing a smoother, brighter complexion while deeply cleansing and detoxifying. Say goodbye to blemishes and hello to a radiant glow. Packed with skin-loving ingredients, your skin will feel refreshed, clear, and vibrant. Don't wait. Elevate your beauty routine today. Click the link and get your Fetish Ultimate Facial Cleanser now at uglyessentialsonline.com. Are you ready to share your story with an audience eager to learn from your journey? Welcome to the Earl Hall Show, the podcast where entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and creatives share their unique insights and experiences. With over 15,000 subscribers on YouTube and episodes promoted on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, your story will reach an engaged and growing audience. As a guest, you'll join me for a 20-minute pre-recorded video interview aired every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Book your spot now for just $49. This offer won't last long. The Earl Hall Show. Your story deserves to be heard. We're back with Dr. James A. Anderson. He's our featured guest today on the Earl Hall Show. Before we went to break, Dr. Anderson, you mentioned something that kind of intrigued me, which was Black psychology was emerging back when you began. What is the difference, if you can kind of quantify that or put that in layman's terms, between Black psychology and any other type of psychology? Why is there a Black psychology?
Well, the emergence of psychology historically only involved concepts and the behaviors associated with white folk. And so for people of color, especially Black Americans, there was no history, no evidence of et cetera of their emergence and their psychology. And so the Association of Black Psychologists emerged, and I started attending their conferences both as a student and later on as a professor. And that's where I got exposed to really a different way of thinking about the discipline and the field. And I actually became one of the first people to write about the learning styles and the cognitive styles and how people of color interpret information in their life, in their reality. And it was different than the way traditional psychology had explained it.
Could you highlight one or two of those differences that you saw?
Yeah. For example, as I said, my area was learning styles. So when students are in a classroom, what do they pay attention to? How do they process information from a lecture? Well, for many students of color, they operate both in the cognitive intellectual dimension, but also the affective dimension. Affect, sometimes mistakenly, is thought of as being the same thing as emotion, but affect has to do with how what you're hearing and what you're learning pertains to your reality in your real life. So I said, I happened to be a teaching assistant in a course at Cornell that had 800 students in a huge auditorium. And I was sitting in the back of the auditorium with all the other teaching assistants. And I said to myself, man, this is an impersonal learning environment. I wonder if, and then I asked the next question, I wonder if men do better in this environment than women. I wonder if white students do better in this environment than students of color. I wonder if Asian students do better than white students. Lo and behold, I had a dissertation topic, and very little had been written about that at that time. And so I ended up becoming one of the first featured individuals to talk about learning styles and to go to conferences and speak and go to universities and high schools and help the instructors and think about ways that they could utilize that classroom to best amplify the reality of those kids.
Okay. It's when you were contemplating even writing the book, The Miracle on Corcoran Street. How did that all come about for you?
Well, I reached a point in life where, and I think this had something to do with it. I have two daughters by a previous marriage, and one passed away from long-term COVID 2 years ago. And sort of as a tribute to her, I said, I need to write about my life. Even though I didn't write about it after she was born, it was something about my connecting with her from birth till, you know, she passed away at 42, even though she functionally operated at only about 6 or 7 years old. And so I had to really do a lot of things with her and help her. And it was my commitment to her. So I thought about my life and how different my life was because I was abandoned. I've never seen my parents. I don't even know their names. I don't know their last name. I don't know my real name, etc. And when I went on a search to get my original birth certificate, they told me my papers had been sealed for 50 years and
Uh-huh.
by a judge. And so I couldn't even access the original birth certificate. So anyway, coming back to your question, it was a combination of events, her passing, my wanting to know more about myself, etc. My just kind of, I have a big void in my life that I can't account for. I don't have any pictures, I don't have any, things that really give me a sense of who I was, where I came from, etc. And I tried all that, 23andMe and
Okay.
Ancestors.com, and that didn't work. That didn't reveal anything. And so I think it was more that I just was trying to complete a picture of myself and my life, and I couldn't do it. And I thought that psychology would help me. And, even though psychological theories are there to explain human behavior and a lot of other things, I still didn't have a sense because I didn't have a picture. I didn't have a toy. I don't have anything from my early years.
Yeah.
And to think about how I started in that environment and went on to become a chancellor of a HBCU, which your wife attended. I'm gonna give
Yes.
her props.
Yes,
She
sir.
graduated from Fayetteville State. I
Yes, sir.
have to go back and call my folks and say, pull up her transcript. Let's see how well she did.
She was a criminal justice major and spent her life in criminal justice.
Did she
Now,
really?
as a police officer, probation, all of that until she retired.
Well, it's interesting because I remember the first time I got hauled off to a juvenile detention center,
Oh my
which in
gosh.
DC at that time was called Junior Village. And it was only because it was a gang fight, our gang against a gang from Northeast, the Ricks Park Boys. But when they asked me who to call, since I didn't have any parents, I said, call the nuns. And the nuns, and the book actually is about the relationship between the nuns and the black prostitutes in the neighborhood and how they conjoined their efforts to extract me from the gang and start me on a pathway to being successful. So when I went to the juvenile detention center, the nuns showed up, 2 nuns and 2 prostitutes, and took me home. And I thought they were going to ream me out for getting in trouble, but they didn't. They just gave me encouraging talks. And from that point on, and it made me really realize, and that's what I've tried to do in my life, is when I counsel students or run into students and who are having difficulty with their life, I try to remember and reflect back on how the nuns and the prostitutes encouraged me rather than beat me down.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Anderson, I mean, this seems to have been a labor of love for you and of self-discovery.
Yeah, it is. And, I want to say to people sometimes, if just one thing happens in your life, it can change the course of your life. And so that's why my interactions with students, for example, I was one of the first earliest Blacks to get a PhD in psychology at Cornell. But I've sent 5 students back to Cornell to either get a PhD or a master's degree in different areas. And that was my give back because people made such a difference in my life.
Well, you've had apparently a very rich life, a very intricate life, somewhat eclectic even, with the different experiences that you've gone through. And so I do definitely want to encourage people to get your book. We're going to link that in the description of this interview that we're doing with you. But how would you like people to stay in contact with you if they want to talk or get more information?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and also you can contact me via my email address. And I don't know if
what is your email address? You can say
JA201.
Okay. And any other social media links? Like, are you on Facebook? Are you on?
Well, when I was chancellor in the University of North Carolina system, they told the chancellors not to get on social media because they didn't want people contacting you about, you'd be surprised.
Okay.
I had parents contact me and loan them. They wanted a loan. They wanted me to loan them some money or something. So the UNC system said, okay, don't get on social media. So I wasn't on social media. I retired a couple years ago. And then I realized when I did this book, through the help of Anissa Short.
Yes.
Anissa and the publishing group that she's with, Chosen Pen,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I have to get on social media. So I'm on LinkedIn now.
Okay.
And I'll probably do Facebook.
And so they can look you up on LinkedIn just at Dr. James A. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm going to make sure that I connect with you there as well myself now that I know. But Dr. Anderson, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your life and for what you've been able to do through the challenges and everything else, because you definitely made a 180 from where you were headed to where you wound up. So I thank you. And a lot of people that you've touched, I'm sure, have thanked you over the years.
And guess what? 60 years later, after that exciting childhood, a guy comes up to me. I'm in Fayetteville. A guy comes up to me and says, do you remember your street address on Corcoran Street? And I said, I'll never forget it. It was 1430 Corcoran. I said, why? Why are you asking me that? He said, because I live diagonally across from. And I stepped back and looked at him. And I said, you were the little kid that wore the cowboy outfit and had the cap guns. I said, I called him the Black Cowboy.
Okay.
And that's something. It's such a
that is definitely
world.
Something.
And the reason he stood out was because his mother, he was the only kid on the block with 2 parents. Everybody else had either no parent like me or one parent who worked all the time. They didn't even see him all the time. So his mother started giving the kids bologna sandwiches which was great because that meant I didn't have to go steal food.
That must be a Fayetteville thing because my wife still eats bologna sandwiches.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, this was in DC, remember?
That was DC. Okay.
Yeah. And so I said to him, I wish your mother was still around so I could have thanked her, because she probably kept me out of the junior village, the detention center,
That's
because
insane.
I would have had to steal to eat, but she fed us. I said, I wish I could thank her. I wish she was still alive so I could thank her. He said, well, I'll arrange for you to have the three of us to have lunch. The woman is 103 now, is 103. And when I walked into the restaurant, when he had arranged lunch, I saw her and I broke down in tears. And she said, you're the cute little boy who lived diagonally across the street who didn't have any parents.
Wow.
She looked up and saw me and said that. I was so moved, man. I'm almost moved to tears now by that moment. Yeah.
It's, I mean, when you live such a rich life.
It's just, anybody who wants to learn more about, my book is about the emotional resilience that people help me develop, the strengths, the knowledge base, to get a PhD from an Ivy League school, etc. Yet to start off life with such hardship. And there's so many young men of color out here who are, struggling to make ends meet every day, and who don't have a dream and don't have hope. And even the prostitutes. And, people think of prostitutes and nuns as being diametric on the ends of continuums. But they joined forces for me. And, it worked out well.
Well, Dr. Anderson, I definitely once again want to thank you for being on the show with us today on the Earl Hall Show. And to you, the listening audience, thank you so much for being here. We're going to get that information for Dr. Anderson. It'll be in the show notes so you can connect with him. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Earl Hall Show. Take care.
Thank you, Earl. I appreciate it.
More than welcome, Dr. Anderson.
All right.